I suppose every story of betrayal starts with a confession, and mine is no different. If I'm being honest, I've rehearsed these words countless times in my head, sometimes as though I were explaining myself to a friend, other times as though I were standing trial. Perhaps, in a way, I am. Because what I did, what I allowed myself to feel and to do, changed everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and myself. My name doesn't matter much here, but what matters is that for most of my adult life, I believed I was a good person. I married young, 26, to be exact. Her name was Anna. She was the kind of woman who could fill a room without speaking. She had a quiet grace, the kind of presence that wasn't demanding but impossible to ignore. We met at a friend's dinner party, one of those evenings where you expect nothing but polite conversation and too much wine. And yet, I left with her number scribbled on a napkin, feeling as though something irreversible had just shifted. Our courtship was brief but intense. We laughed easily, we dreamed in sync, and within 2 years we were married. I won't lie, the first years were blissful. We traveled, we stayed up late talking about our future, and we built a life brick by brick. I still remember the first night in our apartment, when we had no furniture except a mattress on the floor and 2 mugs for coffee. We ate takeout in cardboard boxes and swore that one day we would look back at that night as the beginning of everything. And we did, at least for a while. But the truth is, life has a way of wearing people down. The routines that once felt comforting turned into cages. Anna was steady, reliable, and deeply loving, but she was also cautious, pragmatic to the point of suffocation. I, on the other hand, always felt this restless pull, a need for something more, though I could never define what more meant. By the time we hit our 7th year of marriage, cracks had begun to show. We still loved each other, but passion had dulled into habit. Our conversations drifted more often toward bills, work schedules, and trivial disagreements about dishes left in the sink. The intimacy we once had became predictable, almost mechanical. I told myself this was normal, that long-term relationships always settle into routine, that passion isn't meant to last forever. But deep down, I felt a growing ache, a hunger that no amount of rationalizing could silence. It was around this time that my career began to demand more of me. I worked in a mid-sized marketing firm, nothing glamorous, but the kind of job where ambition mattered. Long hours, client meetings, late-night brainstorming sessions, they all became excuses for staying out longer, for avoiding the suffocating silence at home. And it was through work that I met her. Clara. Even saying her name now, years later, sends a chill through me. She wasn't the kind of woman who immediately drew every eye in the room. No, Clara was different. She carried herself with a quiet intensity, sharp eyes that seemed to notice everything, and a laugh that slipped out at the most unexpected moments. She joined our team as a consultant on a major campaign, and from the very first meeting, something about her unsettled me. At first, it was nothing more than admiration. She was brilliant, articulate, unafraid to challenge ideas. But as weeks went by, I caught myself noticing details I shouldn't have, the way her hand brushed her hair when she was thinking, the cadence of her voice when she grew passionate about a point, the faint perfume she wore that lingered after she left a room. These weren't things a married man should notice, and yet I did. I told myself it was harmless. People develop crushes, it doesn't mean anything. I went home to Anna every night, tried to convince myself that my marriage was solid, that my feelings for Clara were nothing more than a fleeting distraction. But even then, a dangerous seed had been planted. The first real moment, the one where I should have recognized the danger, came one late evening at the office. Most of the team had gone home, and Clara and I were the last 2 lingering over the final touches of a presentation. We worked side by side, exhaustion tugging at us, until she leaned back in her chair, sighed, and said, "You know, you're not like the others here. You actually listen." It was such a simple comment, but it pierced me. I hadn't realized how starved I was for recognition, for someone to look at me and see more than a husband who forgot to take out the trash or an employee trying to climb the ladder. Her words felt like a spark, and though I laughed it off, something inside me shifted. That night, I went home to Anna, kissed her goodnight, and lay awake staring at the ceiling, Clara's words echoing in my mind. If I had been wiser, or braver, I would have pulled back then. But instead, I leaned closer. And that was the beginning. It's strange how easily lines blur. One day you're certain of your boundaries, of your moral compass, and the next, you're navigating in the dark, convincing yourself that you haven't crossed any line at all. That was me in those early months with Clara, always dancing dangerously close to something I couldn't yet name, all while assuring myself I was still faithful. Our work kept us side by side more often than it should have. Late nights became a rhythm. We'd order cheap takeout, spread documents across the table, and drift into conversations that had nothing to do with clients or deadlines. She told me about her childhood in a small town, about her complicated relationship with her parents, about the ex who had left her broken but stronger. I told her about Anna, though always in vague strokes. Clara knew I was married. I made sure to mention it enough so it wouldn't seem like I was hiding it. And yet, there was always a pause, a flicker in her eyes when my wife's name came up, as if she was assessing the weight of it. It was harmless, I told myself. People confide in coworkers all the time. But I knew, deep down, that I was giving Clara parts of me I no longer gave Anna. I laughed more with Clara, argued with her about ideas, admitted my insecurities in ways I couldn't at home. At first, it was intoxicating, this feeling of being seen, of being wanted without even being touched. The first physical moment came unexpectedly. We were walking out of the office one evening, both of us exhausted, and she stumbled slightly on the curb. Instinctively, I reached out, my hand catching her arm. She looked up at me and smiled, a small, private smile that carried a weight I can't quite explain. I let go almost immediately, but the heat of her skin lingered on my palm all the way home. That night, when I slipped into bed beside Anna, guilt washed over me. She was asleep, her breathing steady, her face peaceful. I stared at her for a long time, wondering if she could sense it somehow, this invisible shift, this secret I carried that wasn't yet an action but already felt like betrayal. And yet, the next day, I sought Clara out again. We grew closer in ways that were subtle but undeniable. A hand brushing against mine as we passed papers. A glance held a second too long. Jokes that skirted the edge of something dangerous. She had a way of looking at me when the room was full of people, as though we shared a private language no one else could hear. One evening, we found ourselves alone in the office kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. I was leaning against the counter, and she stood just a foot away, pouring herself a cup of tea. Without looking at me, she said quietly, "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" The question hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened, because yes, that was exactly how I had been feeling for years. Like the man I was on paper, a devoted husband, steady employee, was somehow disconnected from the restless, yearning part of me that longed for something different. I didn't answer right away. When I finally did, my voice was lower than I intended. All the time. She looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment I thought she might close the distance between us. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. But instead, she only smiled, a sad little smile, and walked away. From that moment on, everything changed. It wasn't that we suddenly became reckless or obvious. No, it was subtler than that. But there was an undercurrent now, a silent agreement that whatever this was, it was more than friendship. And every time I went home, Anna felt further away, as though we were speaking different languages. She noticed, of course. She asked if something was wrong, if I was stressed at work. I lied, smoothly, telling her I was just tired, that the projects were wearing me down. She believed me, why wouldn't she? Trust was something she had never thought to question. But inside, I was torn apart. I would sit at dinner with Anna, nodding at her stories about her day, while my mind replayed moments with Clara, her laugh, her gaze, the way she leaned in when she wanted to make a point. I hated myself for it. And yet, the more I hated myself, the more I craved her. The real turning point came one Friday night. The office had cleared out, and Clara and I were finishing a report. The air was heavy with that strange mix of exhaustion and adrenaline that comes from long hours. At some point, she leaned back in her chair, sighed, and said, "I think I need a drink." "You?" I should have said no. I should have packed my bag, gone home to my wife, and never looked back. But instead, I nodded. We ended up in a quiet bar not far from the office. The lights were dim, the air smelled of whiskey and wood polish, and for the first time, we weren't colleagues, we were just two people, stripped of roles and responsibilities. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing, our knees brushing under the table until neither of us bothered to move away. When the night ended, we stood outside, the cool air sharp against our flushed faces. She looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and for a heartbeat I thought we might kiss right there on the sidewalk. Instead, she whispered, "Good night," and walked away, leaving me standing there with my pulse racing and my hands trembling. I went home to Anna that night, slid into bed beside her, and felt the full weight of my double life pressing down on me. The line hadn't been crossed yet, not physically. But in every other way that mattered, I knew I was already guilty. I've tried, many times, to pinpoint the exact moment when the affair truly began. Was it that night at the bar, when our knees brushed and neither of us pulled away? Was it in the office kitchen, when her question cracked something open inside me? Or was it later, when I finally let myself do what I'd been aching to do from the moment I met her? The truth is, the affair didn't start with a kiss. It started long before that, with every secret glance, every conversation I didn't tell Anna about, every flicker of longing I allowed to grow unchecked. By the time our lips finally met, we were already drowning. It happened on another late night at work. The office was deserted, the kind of silence that feels almost sacred. We were sitting close, reviewing slides for a client presentation, when I noticed her hair falling across her face. Without thinking, I reached out and tucked it behind her ear. The air shifted instantly. Her eyes met mine, wide, unblinking. For a moment neither of us moved, and then it happened. She leaned in, or maybe I did, I don't remember who closed the gap. All I know is that her lips were suddenly on mine, soft and urgent, and the world tilted. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, years of repressed hunger condensed into a single, reckless act. My hands found her face, hers clutched at my shirt, and for a few seconds we were lost in a frenzy that felt both terrifying and inevitable. When we pulled away, both breathing hard, reality came crashing back. She whispered, "We shouldn't," but her fingers were still gripping my sleeve. "I know," I said. But I didn't let go. That night, I drove home in a daze. Anna was already asleep when I slipped into bed, her body curled peacefully under the blanket. I stared at the ceiling, my lips still burning, guilt clawing at me. I told myself it had been a mistake, that it would never happen again. But deep down, I knew I was lying. Because once you've tasted forbidden fruit, nothing else satisfies. The second kiss came sooner than I expected, days later, in the stairwell at work. We had both arrived early, the building still empty, and when we crossed paths, the tension between us was unbearable. Neither of us spoke. I pressed her against the cold wall, and our mouths found each other again, this time slower, deeper, deliberate. There was no going back after that. And soon, it wasn't just kisses. The first time we slept together is burned into my memory with painful clarity. It was at a hotel, under the pretense of a client meeting. The room was small, anonymous, with beige curtains and a bed that creaked with every movement. I remember fumbling with the keycard, my hands shaking, her breath hot against my neck as she whispered, "Are you sure?" I wasn't sure. Not at all. But desire drowned out reason, and once we crossed that threshold, there was no hesitation left in either of us. The sex was frantic, almost violent with need. It wasn't tender, not that first time. It was the release of months of tension, of stolen glances and suppressed urges. Afterward, we lay tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, the silence deafening. She stared at the ceiling, I stared at her, and neither of us dared to speak what we were both thinking. We've just destroyed something we can't ever rebuild. I went home that night reeking of guilt. I showered twice, brushed my teeth until my gums bled, but I still felt contaminated. Anna kissed me when I walked through the door, and I almost broke down right there. But I didn't. I smiled, asked about her day, and pretended nothing had changed. Except everything had. From then on, my life became a double existence. Days with Clara, nights with Anna. Lies piled up like bricks, each one heavier than the last. I became skilled at fabricating excuses, late meetings, business dinners, sudden deadlines. Anna trusted me so completely that she never questioned it. And that trust made the betrayal all the more unbearable. But here's the thing no one tells you about affairs, they're not just about sex. Yes, the physical pull was undeniable, addictive even. But what hooked me was the intimacy, the way Clara looked at me as though I were the most fascinating man in the world. With her, I wasn't the tired husband who forgot to take out the trash. I was vibrant, alive, desired. We carved out stolen moments wherever we could, hotel rooms, her apartment, even the back seat of my car once, parked in a shadowed lot. Every touch, every kiss, was both ecstasy and agony. Because no matter how much I wanted her, the guilt never left me. It sat heavy in my chest, a constant reminder that I was betraying the woman who trusted me most. Anna noticed changes, of course. She asked why I was always distracted, why I seemed distant even when we were together. I lied with practiced ease, assuring her that work was stressful, that I was just tired. She wanted to believe me, and so she did. Meanwhile, Clara and I sank deeper. She would text me late at night, her words pulsing on the screen like sparks, "I miss you. I can't stop thinking about you. When will I see you again?" I would read those messages lying beside Anna, my stomach churning with a cocktail of desire and shame. The passion was undeniable, but so was the danger. Because the deeper we fell, the more fragile the balance became. And part of me knew, it was only a matter of time before the truth would shatter everything. Affairs, at first, feel intoxicating. You convince yourself you've stumbled upon some hidden truth about passion, that you're living in a secret world where everything burns brighter, tastes sharper, feels more alive. But that fire doesn't come without smoke. And eventually, the smoke suffocates you. With Clara, the passion never dulled, it only grew sharper, more desperate. But so did the complications. She wasn't content being just the other woman. At first, she told herself, and me, that she could handle it. That stolen nights and hidden hours were enough. But it wasn't long before she began to crave more of me, more of my time, more of a place in my life that went beyond shadows and secrecy. It started small. "Stay a little longer," she'd whisper after we'd spent an hour tangled in sheets. "Call in sick tomorrow. Tell her you're working late again." Sometimes I did. Sometimes I didn't. But every refusal planted a seed of resentment. And with every compromise, the weight of my lies grew heavier. Anna, meanwhile, wasn't blind. She never accused me directly, but she noticed the shifts, the way I kept my phone closer, the sudden bursts of energy when a text came in, the new cologne I wore without explanation. She asked questions, gentle at first. "You've been busy lately. You seem distracted. Is everything okay with us?" And every time, I lied. I lied so smoothly it scared me. "Yes, just work. No, nothing's wrong. Of course I love you." The words tasted bitter, but they slipped out effortlessly, as though I had rehearsed them all my life. The first real fracture came one evening when Clara and I were out together, reckless enough to risk being seen. It was a dimly lit restaurant far from the city center, the kind of place where anonymity felt safe. We were laughing, leaning close, her hand brushing mine under the table, when suddenly she froze. Her eyes darted past me, and I turned to see a colleague from work at the bar. My blood ran cold. He hadn't noticed us yet, but the risk was undeniable. Clara grabbed her purse, muttering, "We have to go." We left in a rush, slipping into the night like criminals. My heart pounded all the way to her apartment. When we finally collapsed inside, she was trembling. "I can't do this anymore," she said, voice breaking. "I can't keep hiding like this. Don't you understand? I need more than scraps of you." Her words cut deep because I knew she was right. I was asking her to live half a life, to settle for pieces of me, while I went home every night to Anna. But the alternative, leaving my wife, destroying the life we had built, felt impossible. I told Clara what she wanted to hear, that things would change, that I just needed time. She clung to me, tears dampening my shirt, and for the moment, it was enough. But deep down, I knew the clock was ticking. Meanwhile, Anna's suspicion grew. One night, as I was stepping out of the shower, she confronted me. "Who is she?" The question hit me like a gunshot. I froze, towel in hand, heart hammering. "What are you talking about?" I asked, forcing my voice into calmness. Her eyes were sharp, searching. "Don't play dumb with me. I'm not blind. You're somewhere else half the time. Your phone lights up at midnight and you walk out of the room to answer it. You don't touch me the way you used to. So tell me, who is she?" I don't know how I managed it, but I denied everything. I wrapped her in my arms, whispered that she was imagining things, that I was stressed and tired, that I loved her. Tears filled her eyes, and for a moment I thought she might see through me. But she nodded, swallowed it down, and let me go. That night, lying beside her, I felt like the worst man alive. And yet, even with guilt gnawing at me, I checked my phone under the covers, a message from Clara glowing on the screen, "I need you. Come to me." I went. The tug-of-war grew unbearable. Clara's demands escalated, Anna's suspicions sharpened, and I found myself fraying at the edges. I started drinking more, avoiding friends, isolating myself in a cocoon of secrecy. Every moment was a balancing act, one misstep away from collapse. The worst part? I began to resent them both. Anna, for her trust that felt suffocating. Clara, for her need that felt unrelenting. And myself, most of all, for being too weak to choose. One night, Clara looked me straight in the eye and said, "Leave her. Or I will leave you." The ultimatum hung heavy in the air. I stared at her, my chest tight, knowing that whichever path I chose, someone's heart would be shattered. Maybe all three of ours. And in that moment, for the first time, I wondered if the fire that had once felt so intoxicating had already burned too far out of control. The thing about living a double life is that sooner or later, the two worlds collide. No matter how careful you are, no matter how clever your lies, something slips through the cracks. And when it does, it all comes crashing down faster than you can prepare for. For me, it happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. Anna had asked me to be home for dinner, she wanted us to spend more time together, to reconnect. I agreed, half-heartedly, but when Clara texted me that afternoon, "I miss you. Come over tonight," I gave in without hesitation. I told Anna I had a late meeting, kissed her cheek on my way out the door, and drove to Clara's apartment. We cooked pasta together, drank wine, and for a few blissful hours, the rest of the world disappeared. I let myself believe, just for a moment, that we were normal, that this was our life. Clara curled against me on the couch, tracing lazy circles on my chest with her fingers, and whispered, "Why can't it always be like this?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because even in my fantasy, I knew it was impossible. It was nearly midnight when I finally left her apartment. As I drove home, a knot of unease twisted in my stomach. I couldn't explain why, but something felt wrong. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark, except for the faint glow of the living room lamp. Anna was waiting for me. She was sitting on the couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her phone beside her. When I walked in, she didn't say a word. She just looked at me, eyes hollow, face pale, and in that silence, I knew. "Anna," I started, but my voice cracked. She held up her phone. On the screen was a series of messages, my messages, somehow sent to her by mistake. I don't know if it was a slip, a wrong number, or if Clara had done it intentionally in a fit of desperation. But there it was, proof. Words I could never take back. "I need you tonight. I'll tell her I'm working late." Anna's voice was barely above a whisper. "How long?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat closed, my chest heaved, and still, I couldn't speak. Her eyes filled with tears. "How long have you been lying to me?" Finally, I whispered, "Months." The word shattered her. She covered her face with her hands, sobs racking her body, and I stood there, helpless, watching the woman I had promised to love and protect crumble because of me. I wanted to reach for her, to comfort her, but I knew I had no right. When she finally looked at me again, her expression had hardened. "Get out." The two words sliced through me. I tried to plead, to explain, but she cut me off. "I don't want excuses. I don't want lies. Just go." And so I went. I drove aimlessly that night, numb and shaking, until I found myself at Clara's door. When she opened it, I collapsed into her arms, confessing everything. Anna knew, the truth was out, my marriage was over. For a moment, Clara seemed almost relieved, as though this was what she had wanted all along. She kissed me, whispered, "It's us now," and held me tightly. But even in her arms, I felt no relief. Only grief. The days that followed were chaos. Anna moved out of the house, staying with her sister. Friends called, confused by rumors, their voices laced with judgment. My family avoided my eyes when we spoke. At work, whispers followed me down the hallways. Somehow, people knew. Secrets don't stay secret for long. Clara tried to fill the void, but cracks appeared quickly. What had once been thrilling now felt suffocating. Without the secrecy, without the chase, we were just two people with too much history and too much damage. She wanted me to be fully hers, but my heart was still tethered to the life I'd destroyed. Arguments replaced passion. She accused me of pulling away, of regretting my choice. She wasn't wrong. I accused her of pushing too hard, of demanding a future I wasn't ready to face. The very thing that had bound us together, our desperation, was now tearing us apart. One night, weeks after Anna had left, Clara looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You'll never love me the way you loved her." I didn't argue. Because deep down, I knew she was right. That night, she packed a bag and walked out of my life. No drama, no screaming, just quiet finality. And I let her go. When the door closed behind her, I sat alone in the silence, the weight of everything crashing down. I had lost Anna, I had lost Clara, and in the process, I had lost myself. The breaking point had come and gone, leaving only ashes in its wake. Silence has a way of becoming unbearable when you've grown used to chaos. After Anna left, after Clara left, after the whispers at work died down, I was left with nothing but silence. Empty rooms, cold sheets, long nights staring at the ceiling. No one asking where I'd been. No one waiting for me to come home. At first, I told myself it was freedom. No more lies, no more double life, no more running between two worlds. But freedom, I learned, can feel like a prison when you have no one left to share it with. Anna filed for divorce within weeks. There were no long fights, no bitter battles, just papers signed in quiet offices, lawyers who spoke in detached tones. She refused to see me face to face. The only time I caught a glimpse of her was in the courthouse hallway, and even then, she wouldn't meet my eyes. She looked thinner, older somehow, as though my betrayal had carved something out of her. I wanted to beg her forgiveness, to tell her I still loved her, that I was sorry beyond words. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't erase betrayal. Clara and I tried, briefly, to salvage something from the wreckage. We told ourselves that maybe, without the lies, we could build something real. But reality was harsher than either of us expected. She wanted a future, a commitment, children someday. I could barely get out of bed most mornings. Every kiss, every touch, carried the weight of guilt. Eventually, she grew tired of waiting for me to become the man she thought I could be. When she left for good, it was quiet, almost merciful. Work became unbearable. Colleagues avoided me, some with pity, others with disdain. I lost clients, my reputation tarnished by rumors that spread faster than fire. Eventually, I resigned, not out of choice but necessity. Sitting in that office, surrounded by memories of where it had all begun, was too much to bear. I tried dating after that. Briefly. Dinners that ended in awkward silence, half-hearted attempts at connection that felt hollow. I carried too much baggage, too many ghosts. Women could sense it, the heaviness clinging to me, and I couldn't blame them for walking away. Years have passed since then. I live alone now, in a smaller apartment across town. I cook for one, drink too much, and sometimes wake in the middle of the night reaching for a body that isn't there. I see Anna occasionally, from a distance, at the grocery store, on the street. She doesn't acknowledge me, and I don't approach her. She looks happy, or at least content. I think she's with someone new. I hope he treats her better than I did. As for Clara, she's gone completely. No calls, no messages, no accidental run-ins. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks of me, if she regrets it all, or if I was just a chapter she closed and never reopened. I spend a lot of time thinking about choices. How small they seem in the moment, how monumental their consequences become. One kiss in a quiet office, one lie told too smoothly, one night in a hotel room, and suddenly, everything you thought was solid crumbles. People like to think betrayal is an action, a single moment of weakness. But I know better now. Betrayal is gradual. It starts with the things you withhold, the truths you bury, the feelings you nurture in silence. By the time the act comes, the betrayal has already happened. I don't tell this story to justify myself. There's no justification for what I did. I tell it because it still sits heavy in me, years later, and maybe speaking it aloud is the only way to carry it. If I could go back, I'd choose differently. Not because I didn't love Clara in my own broken way, but because I destroyed more than I created. I shattered Anna, I ruined Clara, and in the end, I hollowed out myself. I used to believe love was about passion, about fire and urgency. But now I know it's about presence. About choosing, every single day, to stay. To be honest. To give, even when it's hard. I learned that too late. So here I am, years older, no wiser, sitting in a quiet apartment with nothing but my words. This is my confession, my memory, my regret. I loved two women, and in trying to have them both, I lost them both. And the cruelest part? Sometimes, when the silence grows too loud, I still dream of them. Both of them. And in those dreams, I'm whole again, just for a moment, before I wake to the emptiness I created.